You ever hear of a guy winning Jeopardy and then using that same brain to plan a murder? That's Paul Curry. On paper, he was a genius, a nuclear engineer, soft-spoken, sharp as hell. He won tens of thousands on national TV answering questions most of us couldn't dream of, but the scariest part? That brain wasn't just used for game shows, it was used to kill. In 1992, Paul married a woman named Linda. Sweet, kind, worked in HR. She loved animals, her family, and believed she finally found the one. Everyone said they looked happy together. A little quiet maybe, but solid. Then things started to change. Linda began feeling sick. Nothing dramatic at first, just a little off. Nausea, fatigue. But over time, the symptoms got worse. Vomiting, confusion, hospital trips that led nowhere. Every test came back clean. Doctors chalked it up to stress, maybe even anxiety. But Linda knew something wasn't right. Then, in the early hours of June 9th, 1994, she was found dead in bed. It looked peaceful. No marks, no violence, nothing out of place. And her husband, Paul, said she just stopped breathing. An autopsy showed no clear cause, no foul play, so the case was closed. But years later, after Paul had moved away, remarried, and collected on her life insurance, someone took a second look, and what they found changed everything. Hidden deep in Linda's toxicology report was something no one expected. Nicotine. Not the kind from a cigarette, but a concentrated dose, strong enough to stop a heart. And Linda? She didn't smoke, never had. So where did it come from? And more importantly, who would have had the access, the knowledge, and the motive to use it? This is the story of Paul Curry, the quiet genius who charmed his way into Linda Curry's life, and slowly, methodically, took it away. A murder so carefully planned, it took nearly 2 decades to uncover the truth. When Linda Curry met Paul, he didn't sweep her off her feet with grand gestures. He didn't have to. He was polite, soft-spoken, intelligent, someone who came off as safe.
I love him, and he's always been good to me.
And after a string of heartbreaks and letdowns, safe was exactly what Linda wanted. She was in her 40s, worked in HR, and lived a quiet life in Southern California. Her friends described her as warm, dependable, and thoughtful. She loved animals, enjoyed gardening, and had a small but close-knit circle of loved ones. She wasn't flashy, and she didn't want drama, just stability, just love. Enter Paul Curry. He worked as a nuclear engineer, a field that demands serious brain power. He'd even appeared on Jeopardy and won thousands.
This is Jeopardy!
He wasn't cocky about it, but he let it be known. To Linda, that was impressive. He seemed focused, put together. He checked all the boxes. Their romance moved quickly. Within a year of dating, they were living together. Not long after they got married, Paul suggested they take out life insurance policies on each other, just in case something ever happened. It didn't raise red flags at the time. Married couples do that all the time, and Paul always framed it as responsible, smart, protective. They bought a home together, kept to themselves. Friends described them as quiet. But behind closed doors, the relationship had its cracks. Paul could be distant, controlling. Linda was hesitant to speak up. She brushed off his quirks at first, until her body started failing her. That's when the real story began. Linda's health started to unravel not long after the wedding. At first, it was subtle. Headaches, nausea, random fatigue. She'd come home from work and collapse on the couch. Her appetite faded. She looked tired all the time. Then things got worse. She started vomiting regularly, sometimes violently. She'd wake up drenched in sweat, her heart racing. Her weight dropped, her skin grew pale. She was dizzy, disoriented. She'd forget simple things or get confused mid-conversation. Her co-workers noticed. Her friends noticed. Even Linda noticed. And that's when the fear set in. She began seeing doctors, a lot of them. They ran blood tests, brain scans, GI evaluations. Nothing turned up. Her labs were clean. Her vitals were frustratingly normal. Every time she thought she'd get an answer, she walked away with a shoulder shrug. Some doctors suggested anxiety, others blamed menopause. One even recommended therapy. But Linda knew something was seriously wrong. She was in and out of the ER. Once, she collapsed at home and had to be hospitalized for dehydration. And Paul? He was right there, sitting in the hospital room, nodding along, saying all the right things. Concerned husband, diligent partner. But to those who were watching closely, something felt off. He was never emotional, never frustrated, almost like he expected it. He started keeping a notebook, tracking her symptoms. He said it was to help the doctors, but in hindsight, it felt like something else. Like a scientist conducting an experiment, calculating, cold, observing how her body reacted to something no one could detect. Linda was scared. She told a friend flat out, "If anything happens to me, look at Paul."
If somebody were trying to do something to you, if they were trying to poison you, any idea who would try to do that?
Well, the only person I could think of that would have a motive to do it would be Paul. And the only motive I can think of is money, but I don't want to really even believe that or think that.
No one knew what she meant. Not yet. June 8th, 1994. Linda wasn't doing well. She was nauseous again, said she felt freezing cold even though it was summer. Paul told her to lie down and rest. He made dinner. They went to bed early. A few hours later, Paul called 911. Calm voice. No panic. He told the dispatcher his wife wasn't breathing. When paramedics arrived, they found Linda lifeless in bed, cold to the touch. Rigor mortis had already begun. That meant she had been dead for a while, long before the call was made. There was no blood, no sign of injury, no bruises, no struggle. Her body looked peaceful, almost like she had just passed away in her sleep. Paul told them she'd been sick, that she hadn't been eating, that maybe her body just gave out. He was cooperative, quiet, polite.
I was completely befuddled when doctors couldn't solve the problem. I couldn't solve the problem.
There was no crime scene, no foul play, just a middle-aged woman who died in her sleep after months of mysterious illness. The coroner's report couldn't determine a cause of death. Her body was cremated days later. And Paul? He filed a claim on her life insurance, over $400,000. And then he disappeared, moved out of state, found a new job, got remarried. The case was closed. Just another unexplained death. But Linda's family couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Over a decade passed, and still, Linda's sister, her friends, they couldn't let it go. They remembered how scared she had been, how sick she looked, and how Paul seemed unaffected. In 2007, a cold case detective decided to pull the file. It had always bugged him. A woman with no medical history dies out of nowhere, and her husband just walks away. They reviewed Linda's ER visits, her blood panels, her symptoms. Then they retested her preserved blood samples using newer technology. Toxicologists noticed something strange. High levels of nicotine. Not from cigarettes, not from patches, but concentrated nicotine. In fact, it was enough to kill someone. Nicotine is a deadly poison in large doses. In liquid form, it can shut down the nervous system and cause heart failure. But it metabolizes fast, making it hard to detect, especially in 1994, especially if you weren't looking for it. They reopened the case and started looking at Paul. He worked with chemicals. He understood toxicity. He had a calm, methodical mind. He was the only one with access to her food, her drinks, her home. And let's not forget, he gained financially from her death. Substantially. This wasn't just suspicious, it was criminal. In 2010, Paul Curry was arrested in Kansas, 16 years after Linda's death. The charges? First-degree murder and insurance fraud. He was extradited to California. He didn't speak publicly, showed little emotion. But when the trial began in 2014, the prosecution laid everything bare. They showed the timeline, how Linda's symptoms started just after the life insurance policy was signed, how she got sicker and sicker over time, always mysteriously, always with no explanation. They played interviews with friends, co-workers, and family. They read aloud the note Linda wrote before she died.
Do you still love Paul?
Yeah, I love him very much.
Do you believe he loves you?
I want to believe that he does. He certainly is convincing. Well, the only person I could think of that would have a motive to do it would be Paul. And the only motive I can think of is many, but I don't want to really even believe that or think that.
Then came the science. Expert witnesses explained how nicotine could be used as a weapon, that it could be injected in small, nearly invisible doses, that a nuclear engineer would know how much to use and how to avoid detection. The defense tried to argue circumstantial evidence, no murder weapon, no fingerprints, no confession, but it didn't matter. The jury didn't need a smoking gun. They saw the full picture, and it was chilling. Paul Curry was found guilty. First-degree murder, fraud. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice, delayed, but not denied. Linda Curry never got to see justice in her lifetime, but the people who loved her never gave up. They kept asking questions, kept pushing, kept fighting, and in the end, the truth came out. Paul Curry thought he planned the perfect murder. He thought he was smarter than everyone else, but it turns out, even the smartest man in the room can still get caught. If you found this story chilling, be sure to like the video, subscribe for more true crime breakdowns, and drop a comment with the next case you want to hear about. Thanks for watching.